Well,
Hello.
good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hello. Thank you all for being here today on the stream with us. We are so appreciative of everyone who is keeping our legislators accountable, everyone who is equipping themselves to be able to have courageous conversations.
Yep.
And we definitely want to encourage you to continue on. Keep on following us throughout the legislative session. We're going to continue to have these live streams as the initial committee hearings for each bill that we're following is being presented. So, how you can go ahead and make sure you're following that is through our legislative updates page. So, you would go
Yes.
to our website. Well, India, do you want to?
Sure. So the URL is delawarefamilies.org/updates. So you can subscribe there and you'll get alerts about live streams like this anytime we have an alert coming up for an important bill. The bill that we're talking about today is a pretty interesting one. I'm just going to give a quick synopsis and then we're going to switch over to the live stream. There are three bills being discussed in this committee, and we're not sure which one they're going to put first. So we will be figuring that out alongside of you. But the bill that we are most interested in this morning is the expansion of the FACE Act. So the FACE Act is a federal bill that prevents people from blocking access to abortion clinics. The language that's used is reproductive health services. We see that euphemism used often, but it's blocking access to abortion clinics and also houses of worship. The problem with this state version is that it doesn't just criminalize the conduct or penalize the conduct. In other words, blocking access, violence, things like that. It actually penalizes speech. So it'll be interesting to hear in this hearing today how they're going to define exactly the type of conduct that is going to be restricted and addressed. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to that live stream and let's see where they are in the process.
That he's going to be a little late. Representative Cook?
Present.
Representative Foreman?
To share the screen.
Representative Lynn?
They're doing the
Representative Phillips?
right now.
Present.
Representative Valerie Jones-Giltner?
Present.
Representative Jeff Kolofsky?
Present.
Representative Charles Postles?
Present.
Representative Brian Shoup?
Present.
Representative Chair, Vice Chair Cindy Romer, she, I believe, is in another hearing, but will join us shortly. And Chair Griffith, I am here. So let's begin. Thank you to our Majority Whip, Representative Ed Osinski, for joining us today. Representative, we're going to go first to you, which is the second item on our agenda for everyone looking at the agenda. This is House Bill 268. It's an act to amend Title 11 of the Delaware Code relating to assault. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. This legislation comes to me from the National Association of Letter Carriers due to the rising acts of violence against letter carriers throughout the state and the region.
All right, so it looks like, again, there are three bills on the agenda, and the one that's being discussed right now is a different bill, not the one that we were talking about. So we're going to take a minute right here and just kind of listen for when our bill is going to come up. But we just wanted to, first of all, thank the church that is hosting us.
Yes, yes. So we are in Newcastle County, India, and I are stationed up at the tippy top of the state, and our studio is down in Seaford. So we reached out to our community, and we have such a vibrant community of supporters here in Newcastle County. One of our local churches in Newark, True Life Church with Pastor Michael Smith. Thank you so much for sponsoring us today so that we could go ahead and have a place to host this. So thank you for hosting us.
Yes, really appreciate it. The Seaford Drive is quite a hike, and with all the snow on the roads, that would have been a very interesting trip. So we're very thankful.
Arduous.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, we're very thankful that we're able to be local today. But I'm going to explain a little bit more too about, just so you guys understand, some of you have been watching and monitoring legislation with us for a little while. But for some of you, this might be a little bit newer. So just to explain a little bit of the bill process and how this typically works. So what we're watching right now is the committee hearing. So this bill is at the first step in the legislative process. So in Delaware, there is a 2-year legislative session. 2026 is the second of our 2-year session. It's also an election year, so that's usually how it goes. The second year is during an election year. And bills have to pass through the committee of the chamber in which it was introduced, and then it needs to go to the entire chamber. Then it'll go to the opposite chamber committee, and then the entire chamber. And then if it passes both and there are no amendments, then the governor will sign it. So for this particular bill, this is House Bill 272. And so this bill is in the very first step of the process. It's getting its first committee hearing in the House committee. So that's just an overview of how the bill process works in Delaware.
Now, India, in with an initial committee hearing, can you talk a little bit about how the public can get involved in a committee hearing?
Yes, absolutely. So the thing about a committee hearing versus a floor session is that the public can actually testify. So you can testify online, you can testify in person, you can go, this particular committee, it looks like it's in the House committee room at Legislative Hall. The beautiful thing about Delaware is the state is small and our legislative hall is also small. So it's
Okay.
pretty easy to navigate. But you just go into the particular room where the bill is being heard, and then you register to sign up to testify. Or if you choose to do it online, then you can go on the website, register, and then they will call on online testimony, which hopefully you'll see today. We'll see if how many people we have testifying today.
Yeah. We definitely have, like I was saying earlier, we have such a vibrant community here in Delaware of pro-life Delawareans. So you're going to be seeing regular citizens going in and raising up a standard of truth for the legislature. And they're going to be going in maybe for the first time, maybe some of them knees knocking, scared, but nervous, but still willing to go out and speak truth in a place where there's a lot of darkness. So
Yeah.
we so appreciate all of our supporters, all of those who are just pro-life, who are going out, who are really going to be standing for the vulnerable.
Yeah.
So,
And the cool thing about, again, just this legislative process and the system of government that we're in is anybody can do this. It doesn't have, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be a concerned citizen willing to engage in the process. And we know that it can be intimidating to speak in general, and then definitely in an arena that you're not used to. So we have a lot of tools on that same URL that we mentioned earlier, delawarefamilies.org/updates. That if you go there, you'll see a document that our policy analyst, Nandi Randolph, or Nandi Gamble now, she just got married, that she put on the website to give you tips on how to testify. Usually you have 2 minutes. Sometimes, depending on the length of the committee hearing, they will cut your time to 1 minute. So you want to be prepared to give a 1 minute and a 2-minute testimony. But if you go to that website, again, it'll have a document that'll explain exactly the process for testifying for the committees. But again, anybody can do this. It's just a way to make your voice heard. Another thing that you can do is directly reach out to your legislator, which is why we have our action alerts. The one for this particular bill, we can maybe go ahead and put that in the chat as well. It is also on that page on /updates. You'll see the link to one of our new campaigns. We have several running right now, and you'll see the one that's talking about this particular bill, which again would be criminalizing free speech, pro-life free speech in particular. So go ahead and go to that and see if you can see our campaign. We're going to take a listen in here real quick just to make sure.
Everything federal, anything that's under federal jurisdiction could then now become a state issue and take away all the responsibilities.
All right, let's go ahead and share and see where they are.
So
They might still be on that first bill, but let's see.
from the feds, so just want to
Sure.
look at that.
Well, and I did think of that, but I mean, also the federal government is making cuts, and that could reduce what they prosecute. This is something that sends to our postal workers that we are with them and we stand by them to make sure they realize that we feel that these assaults need to be addressed. And if the federal U.S. Attorney's Office has a backlog because of budget cuts or staffing issues, the state can step in and take the lead on these offenses. So that's all the other side of it.
Hey, Representative. Okay. Ready now, Justin?
Yep.
Okay.
The only name I have signed up for public comment is Anthony Capone.
Mr. Capone, please come forward. Nice to see you this morning. And if you could sit next to Mr. Representative Lipinski, that'd be great.
Yes, good morning.
So yes, they are still on the postal bill, but I wanted to let it play for a little bit so that you guys can get a preview of the process. Also, I noticed they're talking a little bit about federal versus state jurisdiction in regards to this particular bill, which if you're interested, if you were to go on the website, on the state website, it is House Bill 278 that they're discussing right now. But that is something else that we'll be talking about for our bill, the relationship between the federal and the state. And so again, this particular bill is expanding the federal FACE Act, which was passed, by the way, in 1994 under President Bill Clinton, again, to reduce or to penalize violence committed at abortion clinics, to prevent individuals from entering abortion clinics. But this particular bill is a state version, so it would only have jurisdiction in Delaware as opposed to the entire nation. That's the difference between federal and state. But again, the state bill is going much further than the federal bill. Instead of just penalizing criminal activity, it would actually penalize speech. And the reason we know that, because we've gotten a lot of questions, some on social media, some directly saying, well, how do you know that it's criminalizing speech? And hopefully you'll hear that today in the committee. So I don't want to preempt it. I want to really listen to what our legislators are going to say. But if you read the language of the bill, it uses a phrase discourage, the word discourage, which is not defined clearly. So it is leaving the door wide open for individuals to be perceived as simply discouraging somebody from entering an abortion clinic, not by physical violence, but maybe simply praying, maybe simply having a conversation. So that's how we know that this bill is in fact targeting speech, which could bring a First Amendment violation.
Yeah. So as an example of something that would be really affected is, so for me, I'm a Christian, I love the Lord, and I love the people around me. And if there is, and I even used to work in a ministry where we had women who were post-abortive, we had women who were currently pregnant, and we were counseling them to choose life. And so in that situation, I might not be able to say to them, hey, there are other options. We're here to support you. We're here to help you through the process, really be a helping hand as you're going through this scary moment in life where there might be a lot of uncertainty, there might be a lot of instability, but we'll be here for you if you choose life. That would potentially land me in a heap of trouble should this bill be enacted. So and then you don't even have to be in ministry. You could just be talking with someone who goes to your church. You could be talking with a young mother that you've connected with through, if you're a teacher and you have a teenage pregnancy in your school. So you really have to think about what are the real world implications. Policy matters because people matter. And so if there's going to be a time where our hands are going to be tied and we're not able to support someone, we're not able to speak freely, to be able to express our religious beliefs, because ultimately we're pro-life, because every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. It has inherent dignity and worth and value from conception. So we want to be able to raise that standard of righteousness. We want to be that voice that is standing for the vulnerable. So we want to fight for our right to continue to be able to do that, to protect life, to protect women. So
yeah, and that's a really good point, because one of the things that when we're listening to policy, the reason why we're watching this committee hearing in the first place is if a law is written very vaguely, then that opens the door for litigation. And even if we've seen situations where people were prosecuted under the federal FACE Act and they were brought to court, and the court would throw out the charges, but in the process they had FBI coming to their home. They had the cost of going through the litigation in the first place. So when you have a law that is not precisely written that is very vague, it opens the door for all of these things to happen and for people to be implicated in the process. And so that's one of the questions that we have when we're listening to this committee hearing. We've noticed in this bill that the location of this activity is not defined enough. So is it the case that, as Lizzie was saying, you could be talking to someone in your church or in your counseling office and be prosecuted under this bill? We assume that the intent is for it to be in front of abortion clinics, but that was not clear in the bill. Well, we got the note from our policy analyst who's there on the ground that the bill is being heard now. So we're going to go ahead and switch over.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. All right, we are now going to turn to the second, well, it's actually agenda, it's agenda item number 1, but we're hearing it second, which is House Bill 272, an act to amend Title 11 of the Delaware Code relating to crimes against public order. Representative Heffernan, this is your bill. Please proceed.
Thank you. House Bill 272 codifies in Delaware what already exists in federal law as the freedom of access to clinic entrances and places of religious worship, which is the FACE Act of codified, signed in 1994. And I understand there's been a lot of claims on social media that this bill impedes First Amendment free speech, and that is not true. Protest activities currently taking place at clinic entrances across the state will not be affected by this legislation, but it does not make discouraging reproductive health decisions illegal. It simply reiterates that all violent acts are illegal. And what this policy will do is it protects houses of worship from people protesting that are impeding or obstructing or hurting people that are trying to go inside to worship or to enter a clinic. It mirrors the Federal FACE Act and gives jurisdiction over criminal proceedings to the Delaware Superior Court, but to again say it does not restrict speech, protest, or peaceful assembly. It just criminalizes violence, threats, intimidation, physical obstruction, and property destruction, conduct that has never been protected by the First Amendment.
Thank you very much, Representative. Are you ready for questions? Or
Yes.
Okay. So, if you're wondering what happened, I just I sent up the wrong bill. So Representative Bush is doing the switch, so we have the correct bill. It's just a administrative error. So that's all that was.
That bill was the wrong one?
No, you're good.
Okay.
No, I would run over and tackle it. No, that's and we can double check that. The bill that is now going around, and if Representative Shoup, I think you have it, if you could just confirm that what you have there is 268.
268.
Yep, that's correct. Okay, now we're on to 270. Okay. All right, so with that administrative issue resolved, let's go to questions or comments. Representative Foreman.
I'm just curious to know why you brought this bill forward. If you could talk about that a little bit.
Why I brought it forward at this point is because in January of 2025, the US DOJ, at the request of the new administration, issued some changing policy for the FACE Act. And they said that they will no longer protect clinic entrances, prosecutions, civil actions. They would only do it in extraordinary circumstances, but they would still protect individual's right to free religious exercise. And so this is going to fill a gap. First of all, it codifies federal law in Delaware law, which is something we do in Delaware, but it also fills a gap in federal enforcement because of that language from January 2025 that federal DOJ put forward.
Any further thoughts?
No, that's great.
Thank you, Representative Foreman. Any other questions? Representative Cook?
Can you define for me, or somebody in the room define for me, what do you mean by physical obstruction?
physical obstruction.
Well,
Okay?
give me an example.
I will tell you. Physical obstruction is making entry or exit unreasonably difficult or hazardous into the clinic entrance or into a house of worship. So for force or threat of force, physical obstruction, intimidation, property destruction. This does not apply if someone is doing a peaceful protest, prayer, counseling, leafleting, chanting, and assembly. Those all remain protected, but it's if you were to interfere, restrict freedom of movement, intimidate, placing someone in reasonable fear of bodily harm, or physically obstructing, which makes entry or exit difficult or hazardous.
So my concern, as I'm seeing today, I get 15 trash bins and I'm a block away from my church. Is that physical obstruction and threatening from somebody protesting, which could be peaceful, but they're setting up barriers for me not to get to, if you think I'm going to church or going through that block, blocking cars, blocking church parking lots, does that count? And I'm just trying to see if that,
Representative Cook,
is there a footage you're talking about,
Representative
or
Cook,
how far? Yes.
first let's ask the chair, and the bill sponsor, and then if she would like to call a witness, she can do so.
Okay, if you're putting a barrier in front of the entrance?
No. I said about, that's why I need footage. I'm trying to say, not in front of the church. I can be, church is right my way, you have a block that you're in, and nothing on either end. So do I block the entrance to an intersection? Does that count with 50 trash cans to make a barrier? The other side makes a barrier. People make a barrier up so that I can't get to where that is. Is that physical obstruction for me getting to either a reproductive place or a church? Not exactly in front of the church, because my church has a huge parking lot in front of it.
Right.
So you would be on Route 9 before you blocking Route 9 before you get into my church, if anybody can understand what I'm saying.
Didn't you get in trouble for that? I mean, if there is.
I don't know.
Well, here's what I'm gonna
We gotta
say.
keep the dialogue between the two.
Okay, there's no mention of a buffer zone,
There we go.
but if the individuals are protesting peacefully, offering prayer and counsel, they are not blocking the entrance or exit of clinics or houses of worship. Now, is the intersection you're talking about the only way to get in there? Then that would be blocking an entrance. But what we're trying to keep from happening is people blocking entrances, threatening patients, staff, or clergy, and damaging property, which are all illegal. So, I mean, if you're saying, are they a block away, but the block is the only way to enter, is that the only way people can enter your church by going that intersection, then that would be blocking the entrance. If it's one of many entrances and that people could avoid going that way, and then it would not. Okay. Does that make sense? Like, is that the entrance? Then yes. If it's blocking the way you can get in with, trash cans, barriers, something like that.
That's what they're using today.
What?
That's what they're using today. Getting trash cans and putting barriers up.
And I mean,
to block people or cars or whatever from getting to point A to point B. And I'm just thinking about Avilo on Route 13. Peacefully, they didn't do that, but they made sure the entrances were open. Right. And they were up and down more than a block on DuPont Highway on both sides. The southern part of 13 and the north of 13, people protesting, blessing that it was peaceful.
Right.
But how much, what's the buffer? I like that word. What are we using to say, how far are we talking about? Because you could be an interest on a church that's inside of a house. Let's say in the city of Wilmington, there's some churches there in the middle of the block of houses on both sides.
So, right, so it's not a buffer zone, a Velo Airlines, like, that's not really, that's
No,
not
just
part
use an
of this?
example.
Okay,
Yes, I was just
but,
thinking of something.
does that answer your question well enough?
I would like to see some type of buffer zone or something to put in there, because churches are in different places. They're in storage places. You know, they're places where there's storage that they can go there for storage and do a church. There's some in the middle of the block in neighborhoods in the city, in cities. They're right in the middle of the block where people can't get in their houses, can't go home.
Right.
And they're having those type of instances happening right now.
Would you be willing, Representative Heffernan, to have a follow-up conversation with
Yes,
Representative
let's
Cook?
have a follow-up conversation, because what I have about buffer zones is they face frequent constitutional challenges, but let's talk about it, because my goal is to get the bill out of committee and then work on it over the JFC break.
All right, so should the bill get released, you'll work with Representative?
Yes, of course.
I understand, I'm
Will
just
do.
making sure this is clear.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
In my
because-
district, it's a concern. I just want to make sure you know that. I do both sides of the coin, pro and con. I do. I
Right,
don't do
and-
feelings and emotion.
Right,
But I
and
just want to make
often-
sure
yes.
everybody is covered, the voice of the voiceless on this, especially with First Amendment rights and things of that nature. And I need to be clear on the wording on this, because a lot of people don't understand codified, they don't know what that means, and things of that nature. We got people in this room don't even know what that means. So I'm just saying, we got to be very clear in schoolhouse rock kind of
Right.
terms, so people can understand exactly how this is working.
Thank you. Representative
Thanks.
Valerie Jones, Giltner?
Yes. So in line 8, and I guess it would be line 7 and 8 together, it talks about discouraging another person. And my question is there any other place in Delaware law where we have defined discouraging? To discourage?
Discourage?
Yes.
You said line 8?
Like what?
7 and 8.
That I don't know the answer to.
Would you like to call
I
Ms. Iannelli?
call the attorney, yeah,
Um,
or someone from DOJ.
Okay, well, we have Christy Iannelli here
Christy,
from the
perfect.
Department of Justice. Ms. Iannelli, could you come forward, state your name and title for the record, and then Representative Jones Giltner will address her question to you.
Absolutely. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Judiciary Committee. Christy Iannelli on behalf of the Delaware Department of Justice. Representative Jones Giltner, could you repeat your question?
Yeah, so in line 7 and 8, it talks about in order to discourage any person, and I just want to know how we would base our definition of discouraging someone.
Absolutely. So I'm not aware of other circumstances in the Delaware Code where we talk about discouraging or conversely encouraging, I suppose, particular conduct or activity. But what I will say is this 1310 section is all a criminal enforcement section so that falls under the state prosecutor's office within the Department of Justice. And each of these items represents an element that we would need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So we would need to prove that a defendant used force, threat of force or physical obstruction, and that they intentionally, in this case, discouraged another person from obtaining or providing reproductive health services. I think that you're hitting on something where it would be pretty difficult to prove that element. And that burden is hard to meet because it should be. Anytime we're trying to prove that burden of beyond a reasonable doubt proving the intent to impact another person's emotion or conduct, it should be tough. So I hope that that's helpful.
Yeah, it feels really soft and subjective when I look at any legislation that we bring forward should be very objective, just fact-oriented. And so that word discourage somebody, I mean, if a prayer group is really loud with their prayer, or the biological father is pleading and doing so loudly, that could be discouraging. And it just feels really subjective to me to have that discouraging in there. And then when we bring it forward in lines 21 and 22, a person who's aggrieved by reasons of the conduct. So have they been discouraged greatly and when they were getting ready to enter the clinic, and now they can bring a civil suit against that person or party? It just feels too loose for my comfort whatsoever. And then I guess this would go back to the bill sponsor. Your original opening statement, as far as why this is necessary for you to do this, I guess you received a lot of questions about that. So I pulled out the FACE Act because I'm new to this, right? And I kind of studied back and forth as far as what's in it and why we're going subjective in our version of it. And I don't see the need for that because already the protections are there federally. And so then I look back at the executive order in February of this year, and that was actually done to protect, I guess, not extremism, but it was when they felt like pro-life advocates were being targeted and discriminated against, and the FACE Act was actually weaponized in that event. So to make something vague and soft is allowing it to be weaponized in my eyes. So again, if you could restate what the difference is and why we have to have Delaware code to change something that is federally protected, I'd like to hear that again.
Representative, would you vote in support of the legislation if there was a further definition of the word discourage?
If they removed it and it mirrored the FACE Act, I still see it as a unnecessary legislation. It's not needed.
Representative Lynn, I see your hand, but we have a couple people before you. Representative Heffernan, could you briefly respond?
Yes, all I was going to say is when I look at line 7, the first part of line 7, it says by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction, intentionally injure, intimidate, or interfere with another person in order to discourage any person from obtaining or providing reproductive health services. So I feel that the earlier part of that line explains it's if you are doing any of these things, threatening force, using force, physical obstruction, injuring, intimidating, interfere with that person, that in order to discourage. So I think that makes it, more clear, because it's not really just discouraging. Obviously a person peacefully protesting at a clinic entrance is trying to discourage people from entering. But when that turns physical, when there's actual physical obstruction or injury, then that's how it becomes activated. You asked about, was your other question about why do we need this in Delaware if it's a federal law? Is that what you said?
Yeah, knowing that the executive order that was done earlier in 25 was done so that the FACE Act was not weaponized. They didn't want the FACE Act to be weaponized, so that's why they did the executive order. So now we're weaponizing it.
And I do not think that this will encourage Delaware to weaponize this act. I think it's important that we codify or make it a law in Delaware, especially given the federal DOJ stance that they're not going to enforce the for clinic entrances in U.S.
Thank you. Representative Pulaski?
Just a second, if I can just, because she kind of tied two things together.
You're going to have to wait. Can you quickly answer? And then I do want to provide time to the other representatives who have questions.
Yeah, so I'm just disagreeing with the fact that threat of force or by, and then it's got comma, intimidate, comma, and then we go on to discourage. So I'm having a lot of heartburn there where we're intimidating and discouraging, and it feels too vague for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Velocity?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. I have questions related to specific lines, so I don't know if.
Well, why don't we start with Representative Heffernan?
Okay.
If she wishes she can't answer, then you may ask Ms. Ionelli or any witness that you may want to call.
Sure. Fine. Okay, so lines 5 through 8, just as before, there's
Line what? Say
5
that
through
again.
8.
5 through 8.
lines 5 through 8. There's 2 places where intentionally injure, intimidate, interfere is written on line 5 and line 7, and then the discouraged word. And then in line 53 and 54, if we go to those lines, it has unreasonable there. And, so just, I'm wondering about the subjectivity of that. And yet on lines 31 and 32 and continuing on 40 to 43, it creates an automatic $5,000 statutory damages per violation. And in 40 to 43 can add up to $25,000 in civil penalties per violation for subsequent offenses. So that means that potentially you're looking at $30,000 for a peaceful protest based on the words unreasonable, intimidate, or interfere. And I think that is a place where I'm very uncomfortable going and having people, subjected to, those egregious fines that are cumulative for actions they're taking because they are civilly protesting something. So if you can answer those concerns, please.
And those are the civil remedy, the ones on 40. I'm going to start at the bottom of the end of the question.
Mm-hmm.
The civil remedies, like on line 40, first offense, non-violent physical obstruction, a penalty of $10,000. I think it,
Also
hold
on
on.
line 32 as well, 5,000, then it goes to 10,000, then it goes to 25 on 43.
It does say not more than, which gives discretion to, that it just can't be more than that, but it can be less than that, which I believe it would depend on how egregious the actions by the person obstructing anyone going into a clinic or a house of worship was. So not more up, it means no more than, means that it could be anywhere between, 0 and that.
Okay, so just as a, I don't know that this is fully applicable, but this is an incident that happened yesterday in our home. We were babysitting a 9-month-old and a 2-year-old yesterday, and the 2-year-old comes going from one room to the other, slipped and hurt her knee, and suspectedly, it was subjectively hurt her knee, and so she started crying and crying and crying, and then within like 30 seconds of rubbing and saying it's okay, she was done with it. But that if that is perceived as an injury, then what sort of unreasonable or interference or intimidation could lead to a $5,000, a $10,000, a $25,000 fine? Because that is so, the bill has multiple areas where it's subjective, and I'm not really sure what the goal is here. Is to make sure that there's no that we're making sure that people are so scared when they read this, or when the newspapers report this, or whatever social media reports this, that they're going to get fined for doing something that they're passionate about, when when it's subjective, if I say, here's some literature on abortion, would you mind taking a look at it? And that is so offensive to somebody that I get a $5,000, $10,000, or $25,000 fine. When there's no offense intended, it's just information. And so I think that we're crossing a line here that is really hard to go back from. And that's my concern with this whole bill.
So if I could, Representative Pulaski, I understand the example that you used, but I don't think it's appropriate in this context. We're talking about individuals wanting to access health care, not children slipping and falling and, forgetting about the injury five minutes later. If someone's passing out literature and somebody wants to take the literature, okay, but if someone's forcing someone to take literature, blocking their access to go into a facility, pushing, shoving, etc., I don't understand. I guess my question to you back is, why would you find that acceptable?
Well, that would be assault. If somebody's pushing somebody, I would think, they're touching them, that would be some sort of an assault. But just acting, so this is my point. My point is that you and I could see things completely differently and agree that there's something going on, and one says, oh, that's bad, and the other says, oh, that's not bad at all. It's no big deal. And I think that when we put this out, and then, like if I whispered something into somebody's ear and we went around the whole room here, by the time it's back to me, my guarantee is that what I whispered would not be the same as what I hear on the back end of that. So there's a chance for for this becoming sensationalized and magnified beyond what it needs to be, and I think that people have a right to be protected, for sure, against violence. Absolutely right, but I'm not sure that my words or someone's words of saying, please reconsider abortion, if that is so insensitive and triggers somebody into a fit of anger or hurt feelings or whatever, that it's worth a $5,000, $10,000, or $25,000 fine.
Well, my response to that initially is that nothing in this legislation, I believe, conflicts with the First Amendment, which would protect that right to make those statements. The second thing I'll say, having worked this position before for many years, in order for a prosecutor to bring a case, first of all, to indict and then to follow through with numerous plea agreements and then maybe ultimately a trial, is not an easy process, and that each element of the offense must, as Ms. Iannelli spoke recently on this morning, needs to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. If there's specific issues with language that you think need clarity on, then I would suggest that you and Representative Heffernan have some conversation about that. Again, I think the representative indicated that this is a bill that she would like to get out of committee today and then have discussions on during the JFC break before bringing. So do you have any follow-up? Otherwise, I was going to go to Representative Lynn.
No, it's okay, thank you.
Okay. Representative Lynn?
I'm okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Gorman?
Yeah, I just want to say that, so I, as many of you know, worked at Planned Parenthood in Wilmington for a year. And there was one day a week where medication abortions were performed. It wasn't the only thing that was done there that day. People were coming in for all of the health care that Planned Parenthood provided, which is many things, including prenatal care. And every week, people showed up and stood on the sidewalk because the clinic has a parking lot behind it that is private property. And the people who were protesting, the people who were going in knew that they couldn't go in the parking lot, mostly. They mostly didn't. And if they ventured into the parking lot, a volunteer who was watching the door would tell them, you can't be in the parking lot, you have to go stand on the sidewalk because this is private property. And I will say, we're talking about weaponization here or trying to go after protesters. It was pretty stressful for people who were coming in and seeking medical care to have people there yelling things at them. That is protected, right? But it's not nothing. It's it's not nothing to be seeking care and have somebody standing there making an assumption about what care you're seeking, and you're getting legal health care, and someone is yelling at you as you're going in the door. So, I don't think that this bill is intended to cover that behavior, and I don't think anybody who works there thinks that it is. But I just want to point out, like, what's happening, like, we do have a pretty clear line because it's happening, right? It's already going on, and protecting to make sure that someone who crossed that line, who decided, I'm going to go stand in front of the door and really stop someone, and making sure that that person has consequences, I think is really important.
Thank you, Representative Shoup.
Yes, I think the definitions have to be made clear in order to get it out of committee. Intimidate or interfere have to be made clear, because when it goes further than that, someone needs to decide on what that means. It's got to be clear within the law exactly what that means. And if you'll give me just a minute, I'm going to share a personal story with you in order to show you why it has to be clear. So, as you guys know, I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and when my 6-year-old was when he was almost here, we had an ultrasound, and the first time I went to see an ultrasound, the nurse could not find his nose bone. And we were told immediately that because they could not find his nose bone, that more than likely he would have a mental or physical disability. The first thing the nurse said to us was, you're going to have to determine whether you want to terminate that baby or not.
I appreciate the person.
No. This is part of what I'm getting to.
It is, okay. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the obstruction of facilities and directly to this bill. Because I'm sure all of us at this table can relate and have their own personal stories to share.
Well, they can share it too. This is part of the
Well,
committee.
yes and no. It has to be, as I stated in the beginning.
No, I have the ability to talk about this bill with my personal experience and how it comes about. So, the first thing that the nurse said was, you're going to have to determine whether you want to terminate this baby. Not you should look into what it is to be a family with a child with disabilities. First thing, you need to determine whether you want to terminate that baby or not. So my question is, as the professional in that room, as the nurse who is giving that ultrasound, and as parents that don't understand what's going on at that moment, would that be professional under this bill be held liable for intimidating or interference?
Well, first off,
Go ahead.
You're asking about whether someone's professional advice given to you and your wife, what the accountability for that is. Well, I would imagine if you made a complaint, it would be something that would be taken up within the healthcare facility that you went to. I had the same experience. First off, Representative Shoup, I had the same experience, right? And I complained, and that complaint was addressed to my satisfaction, and here I am. So I'm going to let Representative Heffernan answer that question, but I don't believe that ties into this legislation.
This is very relevant.
Tell me specifically how.
It says that if a person intentionally intimidates or interferes with another person in order to discourage any person from obtaining or providing reproductive health services. So they're pushing us towards one health service and not giving us the options of what those health services are for our child.
I still
Could they be held liable for intimidation or interference?
Representative Heffernan?
Thank you for sharing your story, and I believe Representative Griffith it really addressed it. I mean, that to me is not addressed in this bill because it's not interfering with someone entering or exiting a clinic so therefore, or physically obstructing entrance or exiting a clinic, so, or religious place of worship, so it's not part of this bill. It has not, really isn't part of this bill.
It's for a person
another-
that is obtaining and providing reproductive health services. That's
So
what it
was
said.
your wife blocked from entering in any reproductive health service if she wasn't forced to undergo a medical procedure or not forced to? So again, I think we got to look at the language of this legislation. I appreciate your point, but I think that the issue there is something that, you know, your healthcare professional gave you some, you know, words that, you know, that you felt were trying to influence your decision one way or the other, and that is not relative to House Bill
Well,
272.
and I think that goes to a larger point, that why the freedom of speech is so important. Because the culture has become in such a way that there are people that give their day and their lives up to help people understand that there is options, that there are alternatives, that there are things to consider, and that by not defining the words in here, intimidate or interfere, that we could put that at risk.
Representative Romer, you would like to be President?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Representative Postles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple points that I'd like to make, and some of them have been touched on a little bit, so I'm not going to elaborate, but I just wanted to share my concern also. I think the first one is the definition of discourage. I think it's unusual. It's broad and very hard to define what is meant by discouraged. There's comments made about that. I think the location is really important. And again, that's not defined and described. I think Representative Cook had some concerns about that. None of us are in favor of any kind of violence whatsoever, that I'm sure of. And so the FACE Act, I think, does put in place that any kind of violence or physical, touching or pushing or interference is already covered. I don't think it's needed here. The thing that I'm a little concerned about is I'm afraid this is going to lead to legal action, because we've got several things here that are really subjective. And I would hope that we could do a better job of defining that to ease that likelihood of having legal action. Legal action costs, and it's going to cost the state of Delaware, because this is part of the action that Delaware has as part of its law. So I would like to see us define these things before we go on, because I think it really is going to be subject to legal action. I think that's being, for us to move forward without having that clear, I think is really not what responsible legislation should be.
Thank you. Representative Heffernan, will you work with the Department of Justice to make to figure out like the if there's a defined or to get an answer for Representative
We will look
Postles?
at that. I mean, I think that, that peaceful protests outside of a clinic, the goal is to discourage people from seeking reproductive services, even if all of them are not pregnancy termination. But this is really only when that behavior uses force or threat of force, physical obstruction, intentionally injuring, intimidating, or interfering with another person from entering. So I'll work with DOJ, because we have already worked with DOJ. We worked with Department of Justice. We've worked with the Office of Defense Services, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Okay, let's go. Oh, sorry, Representative Cook.
I just want to be real clear. Now I'm looking at this nonviolent physical obstruction. So my example, can I talk to the DOJ?
Yes.
Reason why I talk about a buffer zone or how far, I know there's some women that was discouraged of getting an abortion or reproductive services. And people were outside giving out a card or giving out information. And that's fair to me, Frank Cook. That's fair. But how far are we saying that they can do this if I'm a half a block away, or like you just explained, you work there. I've seen the people out there. I go to the bank right up the street. And I seen them out there, and you said they're out on the sidewalk because that's public. That's pretty close to that building that you're talking about.
It's right next to it.
Right in front of it. So does that buffer zone, as I'm looking for it, a good word, does that say they got to be 2 blocks away? Because you said they were still intimidated, which I can't believe because you worked there. I wouldn't question you because you worked there. And the other people were intimidated. The workers were intimidated. But is that intimidation if they were giving out information 2 blocks away? I don't know. Half a block away? Or is that obstruction nonviolent? Because I'm giving out information, and some people have turned around, didn't go to the clinic, went on their way and had a child, and glad they did. Blessing. I'm just saying, some folks. No, always happened. I have friends that done it. They got information and they didn't do what they were going to do. I'm just being real, not feelings or emotions. So what is that zone that we're talking about? Is it right in front of the door? We need to say that.
Well, I think,
because it's not clear.
I think Representative Heffernan earlier in the hearing did say that she's going to discuss this with you over the break.
Right, and I will.
All right, Representative Gorman.
Yeah, I just want to say, the point I was trying to make wasn't that they shouldn't have been doing it. Everyone who worked there and the volunteers who showed up every week to escort people in accepted that they had the right to do it. Like, we never challenged it, we never questioned them. So you knew if you worked there 1 day a week, you were going to go in and people were going to show up and be doing that. So I'm just saying, like, that is already happening and it's an acknowledged fact. And we all lived with that because I think all of us agree that First Amendment rights are important. I believe strongly in the First Amendment. I believe strongly in the right to peaceful protest. I've participated in many peaceful protests. And I think people should have the right to express their opinions about things that they feel strongly about. And they are permitted to do that now. It's not happening. It is happening. It's, it probably, well, maybe not yesterday because of the snow, but it probably happened yesterday. But I'm just saying, it's not, that already is not nothing. Like, you are getting to say what you think, and it does have an impact on people. And some of those people are just going to the doctor, right? They're just, and, I'm sorry, but if you've never had that experience of you have an appointment for something that might be stressful or challenging, and someone is standing out there yelling at you for walking in the door, that's not great either. So, but no one who works there ever tried to stop them or questioned their right to do it.
Representative Lofsky.
Yeah, 2 things. Number one is that just yesterday and into this morning, I received 115 citizens who said vote no on this. And the second thing is that I need to be down in the health committee, so I'm gonna thank you. Appreciate all the information.
Understood. Thank you, Representative. Justin, can we please go to public comment?
First, we have Donna Letary.
Ms. Lionel, you can sit back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning. You have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Please just state your name for the record.
You all said it correctly. My name is Donna Letary. I'm one of the faces every week on the Planned Parenthood sidewalk. And I do intend to discourage abortions. My full intention. Why? Because I've saved lives, many lives, until they started using these big golf umbrellas, sticking them in our faces coming up to the sidewalk right in our faces, intimidating us, interfering with our free speech. Don't roll your eyes. It happens. Come join me. You'll see it. We know. We're there. So anyway, we've never been violent. We've never impeded anybody from going forward into the clinic, or into the center, I should say. It only happens one day a week because that's abortion day. We don't, if anybody else wants to do other stuff, we don't impede them. We've never impeded them. We don't discourage them. That's their right, okay? You say you have no boundaries on obstruction. You say down here that if a parent would be excused from it, but what about a counselor? Or what about somebody in the family or a friend for discourage them? You're saying it physically. No, it's not. You've got that word "or" on line 7, or by intimidating or interfering. Those, like you said, they're subjective words. Are you going to have body cameras on every escort out there? We need body cameras out there because I've been attacked out there by a father who was trying to seek abortion. I was trying to offer help, and he attacked me and shoved me up against my car and injured my back. The police came. They said, if you have him arrested, nothing's going to happen to him. They won't prosecute, and he'll be back out the same day. So I didn't prosecute. But now you're telling me that I have to be afraid that I could be charged $5,000 for expressing intent to help somebody, for interfering with an abortion? I have multiple people that were almost killed from these abortions. Thank you.
Next is Moira Sheridan.
Good morning. My name is Moira Sheridan. I'm the president of Delaware Right to Life, and as such speak for the organization and its members. In Delaware, we have free abortions via public and private insurance, free availability of abortion pills on campus, protection from out-of-state prosecution for injuring or killing someone during an abortion, abortion codified into law for any reason at any point in the pregnancy at the doctor's discretion. You pass multiple laws allowing and encouraging abortion for any reason at any point in pregnancy, and you resent any opposition to those laws. So now with HB 272, you seek to silence your opposition. It's very clear. You seek to silence them, to terrorize them with the threat of criminal penalties, and to elevate discouragement of abortion to a punishable offense. You bring to light George Orwell's remark that all tyrannies rule through fraud and force, but once the fraud is exposed, they must rely exclusively on force. The fraud is that abortion is in any way a good for the state of Delaware, that some human beings can be sacrificed so others can do as they please. You cannot legislate its acceptance, so you legislate its availability, thinking that the wider the access, the wider the acceptance. All your free access to abortion cannot change the fact that it is wrong. It is the murder of another human being. Opposition to it will never go away because it offends God, and we are bound to defend the innocent being led away to slaughter. Tyranny against such opposition has been tried and has uniformly failed. HB 272 is tyranny in its rawest forms because it seeks to punish people for what they believe, for their intent to discourage an injustice. The language is deliberately vague and begs the question of just who is deciding what various terms mean. It also begs the question of, shouldn't such a bill emanate from verifiable offenses? Thank you. Who is trying to get into or blocking the clinics and houses of worship in Delaware? Where are they?
Next is Rich Bryant, followed by Namdi Gamble.
Good evening, my name is Rich Bryant, proud citizen of Delaware, and I personally oppose House Bill 272. HB 272 is both unnecessary and possibly dangerous. The Federal FACE Act has proven to be sufficient while not crossing the lines of possibly violating the First Amendment. 1310A2 says, by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction, intentionally injure, intimidate, or interfere with another person in order to discourage any person from obtaining or providing reproductive health services. The language of this bill falls to heavy subjectivity. What does discourage mean? Will it be a Class A misdemeanor, the same level of crime third-degree assault is, by the way, to stop and pray for someone before they go into an abortion clinic? To make discouragement illegal in any place is to get rid of debate. Where there is no debate, there is no freedom of speech. And where there is no freedom of speech, we are no longer America by substance, but only in name. What is odd as well is that places of worship are not protected from discouragement under this bill, only reproductive health services. Therefore, this bill seems to communicate that religious freedom is less valuable than reproductive freedom, a freedom which our founding fathers did not write about. This bill attacks the very identity we have as Americans, given that we have federal law that already protects individuals from violence and obstruction in worship places or reproductive health clinics. This bill is unnecessary and far too dangerous. For the sake of being faithful to the Constitution, I urge you for now to at least oppose HB 272. Thank you.
Next is Namdi Gamble. After that is Eva Casey.
I think this is Miss Gamble or Miss Casey?
I'm sorry?
Miss Gamble?
Yes.
Okay, come.
I got married.
Okay, thank you. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Nandi Gamble, policy analyst for Delaware Family Policy Council, and we stand in opposition to HB 272. Actions like violence, threats, physical obstruction, or property destruction are already illegal. The Federal FACE Act rather comprehensively addresses these negative actions at clinics and places of worship. It's narrowly tailored in its prohibition of negative actions done to someone obtaining or providing abortion or someone exercising religious freedom at a place of worship. Just as importantly, it explicitly states that the law may not be used to prohibit expressive conduct, peaceful protest, or speech protected by the First Amendment. Those clarifications reflect Congress's effort to strike a balance between public safety and constitutional liberty. HB 272 removes that balance. Most notably, it criminalizes actions taken, quote, in order to discourage, end quote. The problem is not the prohibition of force or physical obstruction, as they already exist in the Federal FACE Act, but by asking whether someone acted with a purpose to discourage. The bill effectively alters the core definition. Physical obstruction, for instance, is no longer determined by where someone stands or what they block, but by what the state believed they intended. This creates dangerous ambiguity. For example, pausing to speak with someone on a sidewalk, offering a pamphlet that causes someone to stop momentarily could be labeled physical obstruction if the state claims that the intent was to discourage. Without those guardrails, the bill invites overbreadth and constitutional challenge. Under HB 272, ordinary presence plus alleged motive equal criminal liability. We have already seen the weaponization of the Federal FACE Act, and it is not nearly as subjective as HB 272. By not defining a subjective word within a piece of legislation that has already been weaponized, we open ourselves up to even more harm. For these reasons, HB 272 departs significantly. I urge you to reject this bill.
Next is Eva Casey.
Do you have HB 270?
Sorry, it looked like Casey on the form, but yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Will I go there?
Yes,
Yes, please.
Okay.
I discourage this bill.
Hi, just could you please,
Oh.
just for the record, just state your name?
Oh, Eva Cassis.
Thank you so much.
I discourage this bill because the Bible said you shall not murder. And I used to stand out in front of North Governors many years ago, and I never did anything to yell at a patient coming in, or I just stood, hold signs, and pray the whole time. So I think this bill will not be a good idea to pass because because we're not violently standing out there and protesting like others might see on a day. So that's what my opinion is. It shouldn't pass. Okay.
The next name looks like El Mashan.
What's your name?
I think they thought it was a sign-in sheet.
Okay, well, if you want to speak, you can come here, but you have to do it for the record, so please come forward or say you don't wish to speak.
Okay. I don't have a whole lot to speak.
My name is Lori Marshall, and I oppose the bill passing 272. I've gone with my friend, and we've stood out in front of Planned Parenthood, and we have talked to women trying to discourage them. The one thing I'm concerned about is the vagueness of that term, to discourage, because you are trying to change people's minds, hopefully save a life. And I've watched a lot of things with what's going on in the UK. I'm going to say this right now. And I have seen what's come from bills like this over there. And I hate to see the United States head in that direction, where they arrest like women that are like 70, 80 years old and put them in jail for just standing, praying silently, because it's discouraging. I would hate to see that happen. So I would just, pray that y'all would consider not passing that until there's more clarity to it. Thank you.
Next is Anthony Capone.
Good morning again, representatives. Anthony Capone from the Office of Defense Services. ODS reached out to the sponsor, Representative Heffernan, last night with the following feedback, that we again have some concerns about federal overlap. If this bill is moving forward, I'd like to briefly note one specific definition that we believe should be added to HB 272 to more effectively delineate what constitutes criminal conduct under the statute. This bill seeks to protect both facilities providing reproductive health services and places of worship. Facility is defined, but place of worship is not. Given the parallel construction, there should be a parallel definition. Federal courts have examined the lack of definition in the federal law that this bill is adopting and had to fashion one through analysis of the congressional record. Delaware courts would need to do the same if the term is left undefined, but people whose conduct is governed by the law should not need to stand by for such litigation. To define place of worship, we offer the following simple definition which fits the Second Circuit's analysis. Quote, a space devoted primarily to worship activity. We appreciate Representative Heffernan's response and commitment towards a solution on this. Thank you.
And then last is Javon Rich.
Good afternoon, Ms. Rich.
Or are we still morning?
Morning, I think.
No,
Still
still.
good morning. But thank you for getting my head together on that one. Hi, everyone. I'm Javon Rich. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director for the ACLU of Delaware. Thank you so much for your time. The ACLU of Delaware is here to express its support for House Bill 272, which makes it unlawful to obstruct or interfere with someone accessing reproductive health care or exercising their religious freedom at places of worship. Regardless of one's personal beliefs about abortion or religion, no one should face threats, violence, or obstruction when seeking or providing lawful health services or exercising religion. This legislation does not limit protest or expression, but establishes clear protections against threatened or actual force and obstruction, and ensures that disagreements do not result in someone being harmed. At the same time, the manner of enforcement matters. The legislation provides a wide range of enforcement tools, including a private right of action and action by the Attorney General's office. Yet this legislation also creates new felonies when the prohibited conduct results in bodily injury and death, conduct that can already be addressed with other crimes in the law. We know that felony convictions carry lasting consequences beyond punishment. For that reason, legislators should have restraint in creating new felonies and reserve them for conduct that cannot be addressed through either existing law or less punitive means. Overall, we applaud this legislation being brought forward and ask that legislators reconsider the imposition of felonies for conduct that can already be addressed through existing law. Thank you.
That's all we have for in-person comment. Kate, can we move to virtual comment?
If you wish to comment on HB 272, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. Each member of the public will be addressed in the sequence in which their hand is raised. When your name is called, you will have the opportunity to unmute yourself and share your comments. Up first is Bessie McAnany.
Dear committee, I am pleading with you to pull the bill and do not release SB 272, and I'll tell you why. As a now retired advanced nurse of 59 years, I have educated or discouraged in ledge hall committees for over 50 years on the protection of life from conception to natural death. And in the past 50 years, been on the sidewalks of Planned Parenthood, praying and offering an alternative for women to save their babies, with a change of heart in the very last minute before their life-altering decision. Free speech here is at the crossroads in this bill, even though you say not, by criminalizing those of us who defend life. What's the difference if you throw me in jail today for my free speech here or at Planned Parenthood? It's the same message. We're trying to discourage from abortion for obvious reasons. Yet Planned Parenthood workers, and this wasn't mentioned, they stand to obstruct us from hearing them by their loud manners and umbrellas, loud music. Our messaging gives the women alternative resources. In one case, my family took the then indigent mother into our home who had been raped, but she changed her mind. That baby is now a master's grad in music and now teaching. Her mother subsequently got a job at UD and is a UD retiree. My son took that baby to her senior prom. There are many success stories to be told, even abortion pill reversals, only because they heard the prayers and the messaging that was possible, because somebody did try to discourage and gently intimidate. Hear this, quote, "Let him who has ears listen." That was spoken by Jesus Christ himself. Please pull the bill. The FACE Act already keeps us on the sidewalks. We are told by Planned Parenthood not to put 1 foot on a blade of their grass. And for 50 years, we have done just exactly that. Stayed on the sidewalk, which is in our FACE footage requirement. That's already part of the FACE Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Lizzie Lewis.
Good morning, Chair Griffith and members of the House Judiciary Committee. I'm Lizzie Lewis from 302 Strategies, speaking on behalf of Planned Parenthood of Delaware in support of House Bill 272. Patients in Delaware rely on the law to protect their safety and reproductive rights. Planned Parenthood also relies on the law to protect their medical and professional staff who help support the care and treatment of patients across Delaware. By codifying the Federal Freedom of Access of Clinic Entrances Act in Delaware Code, House Bill 272 will bring us one step closer to ensuring patient safety and the safety of Planned Parenthood's medical and professional staff. Enforcement of the FACE Act is critically needed. Planned Parenthood strongly believes that patients should be able to access care with dignity and respect, and that providers should be able to provide care with dignity and respect without the risk, threat, or fear of physical violence. We appreciate Representative Heffernan for bringing this important bill before the committee today and her continued efforts to protect patients throughout Delaware. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Claire Kelly.
Hi, I'm Claire Kelly, a voice for the voiceless. In Matthew 18:6, Jesus says, "But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea." I ask that you vote against HB 272. This proposed legislation is wrong, vague, generalized, discriminatory, unacceptable, and unnecessary. It is against our freedom of speech and religion. Who dictates this overreach? Where do you draw the line? I am a sidewalk prayer warrior. If it's considered protesting, it's the most peaceful protest I'm blessed and honored to participate in with some amazing people. God calls us to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. We are advocates for life, from conception to natural death. We pray, we don't PREY upon the innocent. We support mothers by providing the truth so they can make well-informed decisions. God is working through us. How dare anyone have the audacity to interfere and to try to discourage God's work? Thanks so much.
Thank you. This concludes public comment for HB 272.
Thank everybody for their testimony this morning. What is the pleasure of this committee?
Motion to release.
Okay.
Second.
Which one will, okay, all right, so Representative Gorman made the motion that was seconded by Representative Phillips. I will now call the roll on House Bill 272. Representative Bush.
Yes.
Representative Cook.
Yes, so that some work has to be done with this, with the wording. If that gets done, I'm voting yes to get it out, but it needs some work.
All right, Representative Gorman.
Yes.
Representative Lynn had to step out. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Jones-Giltner, there are some folks that have committee obligations right now. Representative Pulaski and Representative Jones-Giltner, I believe, are those two that are. Representative Postles.
No.
Representative Shute.
No.
Representative Romer.
Yes.
Representative Griffith, yes. Did I call you Representative Phillips?
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Okay, so the bill has received 6 votes in the affirmative, so it will be released from the committee. I'll also see if anyone else wants to sign on it. I think that maybe one more may, but anyway, it has been released from committee. Representative Heffernan, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for those who came to testify their views and do so in a calm and great manner. Thank you for that. So we're gonna move to one more bill. Thank
Okay, well, that was the hearing. Hopefully you all stuck with us to the end. That was a very lively, very telling hearing. There were a lot of things that we could cover, that we could talk about. But let's just kind of go through it one point after the other, just to give our initial reactions. And because one of my initial reactions to this bill was a lot of people talked about, a lot of the legislators, particularly those who supported the legislation, talked about how they felt the bill would be enforced, what they thought. They used phrases like "to me," and "it would seem to me."
I
feel like, I think, very subjective. But when you're dealing with law, and I know we live in a society that's already rejecting the idea of truth, is very relativistic, and we're just seeing it playing out here. But when you're dealing with law, you have to be precise. You have to look at the language that's actually on the paper and how it's written and how it will or will not be applied in the court system. And so a lot of times you will see, or I will notice in hearings, and it is a point of frustration where a question will be asked and the sponsor will say, "Oh, no, don't worry about it. It doesn't do that." And then the conversation is dropped, the point is dropped, and it's not pushed. But in this hearing, I was very encouraged to hear, as Lizzie was saying, our eyes did not let the point drop. They kept going at it. They kept saying, "But you haven't clarified. This is still vague. You haven't addressed this issue." So it was very clear in this hearing that this bill, HB 272, is vague. It is definitely presenting a free speech violation, mainly for no other reason than keywords are not defined in the bill. So I think that definitely came out loudly and clearly. I would like to say I appreciated the bill's sponsor for conducting a very level-headed, respectful conversation. She answered the questions. She didn't she wasn't, agitated. And I've noticed that with her, and I've always appreciated that. She's very calm and level-headed in the way that she communicates. So it was a good back and forth. It was a good conversation. It was a good discussion. Representative Cook made some interesting points. I thought that one of the things that was interesting about his position is, one, it was very clear that he was listening to his constituents, because he mentioned that. and he was responding to his constituents.
Yeah.
And then he said, I'm not going off of emotion, I'm just going based off of fact, which I think is huge. Again, in this hearing, we saw a lot of I feel and I think, but he was trying his best to stick to what he saw as being factual, what was actually on the paper, and actual genuine questions that he had, even if he would have to speak up and question his people in his party or in his caucus or whatever. So I thought that his comments and his questions were very helpful. We could talk a little bit about the specific point that he brought up, but I just wanted to give him a shout out as well because I thought he did a great job with sticking to his point and not dropping it as well.
Yeah, and that takes courage to do. It takes courage to not go along with the party line necessarily. And that is something that we can always applaud, you know?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and then just to bring up, the main bill sponsor is Heffernan, Representative Heffernan.
Yes. Yeah. So Representative Griffith is a sponsor as well. She was the chair of the committee, but Representative Heffernan is the main bill sponsor. She was the one that was in the nice red blazer answering all of the questions. So yes, it was a very interesting conversation. Worldview clash. Let's talk a little bit about that because we saw that come through. Again, I mentioned already the relativistic worldview. The fact that we have a clash between what is absolutely true and how are our feelings determining whether or not something is true. We saw that pretty clearly. But
absolutely.
is there anything else that we saw as far as a clash in the conversation?
Yeah. One of the big things is that abortion was spoken of as healthcare, where abortion is the intentional killing of a human life. So this is not healthcare. Healthcare is where you're trying to preserve and protect life. So that's a big divide that we have where there's the issue of, it's a fetus. It's not actually a human being. It's not actually a baby. It doesn't have personhood. It doesn't. So you really dive into some philosophical arguments. You dive into this lack of a defined line of even when life begins. And it's a real tell of where somebody roots their understanding of this issue. Because if you root your understanding within truth, you can just look at the science and that says life begins at conception. But then too, when you take it a step further as someone who is expressing their Christianity, someone who's expressing their religious beliefs, you take it to, well, why is life important? Why does life have value even at the start of development? It's because, again, life has inherent dignity and value because human beings are made in the image and likeness of God. So
yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things whenever we have a hearing where we're talking about the issue of abortion, the thing that always comes to mind for me is the fact that we assume as Americans that we ought to protect human dignity, that we ought to protect human rights.
Yeah.
But we've lost the foundation for that because we've already thrown out the reason that we protect human rights and human dignity. That is that human beings are made in the image of God. But if we're saying, oh, that's simply a religious belief limited to certain individuals, well, then that means that there's no universal obligation to protect human rights. So when our legislators are saying, oh, we should be fighting for human dignity, we should be fighting for human rights, they are saying that because they're Americans and that has become embedded in American culture. But they don't realize that if we don't ask the question of why should we protect human rights?
Yes.
If they've already rejected the answer to that we are created in the image of God and have inherent dignity and worth simply because we're human, not because of any other external factor, they've already lost the moral grounding to fight for things that they themselves would fight for.
Yes.
And abortion is one of the clearest examples of that because they're pitting a person's choice to end a life against protecting a life. And they've chosen to go with ending that life.
Yeah, and part of that is we have elevated feelings over objective truth. And you see it across the board in many different issues, many different cultural issues, where it could be is it what I don't remember the specific statistic, if it's 95% of abortions are elective abortions, and
It's only a small percentage that are for health of the mother or
Mhm.
in cases of rape or incest. Yeah.
Yes, very small percentage. So what's happening is women are being um, they're being coerced in many instances. They don't understand fully that life does begin at conception. But then too, you can see on social media, there are so many women who they don't fully understand the implications of what they're doing. And they will get on social media in response to so much pro-life speak, and they will say, I killed my baby today. And they will just, and they'll bring up this point of, "Oh, it was my body and it was my choice," you know? And so that's a example of an elevation of my feelings, my autonomy, it's very individualistic. It's a very different worldview. It's you're putting yourself as the main, um, you're putting yourself as the, there's a lack of sacrifice. There's a
Mhm.
lack of sacrifice
Mhm.
within parenthood has inherent sacrifice
Right.
within it.
Yeah.
And we see that in our relationship with Christ, where part of what makes our relationship with Christ so special is that he sacrificed himself for us.
Yeah.
No. And so this abortion is that demonic parody where, abortion is, I'm going to sacrifice your flesh for me, where Christ says, I'm going to sacrifice my flesh for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And this is also, I know this isn't intentional. I don't think the crafters of this bill intended it. In fact,
Right.
Again, this is kind of mirroring the FACE Act, which
Yeah.
has abortion and houses of worship in
Mhm.
the same in the same bill.
Yes.
And I believe that was because it was originally just going to be for abortion clinics. And then someone said, well, if you're going to protect abortion clinics, what about houses of worship?
Right.
And so then it just got carried into this legislation. That being said, it is an interesting point that they're both in the same bill, because abortion has very much become the sacrament of the left, as some people have stated. And I think the
Yeah.
testimony by Maura Sheridan brought that up, because she outlined all of the bills that have been passed over the last few years, continuing to push through and advance and increase this acceptance or access to abortion. I love what she said. You
Yeah.
can't legislate acceptance, so you have to legislate access. I thought that was a really good point.
Tweetable.
Yes, that was definitely a quote that we could use.
Yeah.
But so that is what has become the sacred cow, so to speak, of our culture, and it's put in the same breath as houses of worship, which is, again, it's an interesting point. But
Yeah.
what is it that determines how we feel about human life? It's our relationship and our understanding of our relationship with God as human beings. Are we created in the image of God? And at this point in our culture, the institution that is going to be proclaiming that the most is going to be the church, because it's
Yes.
no longer assumed in the rest of our culture. So you're going to find that in our churches.
That's right.
So that's just an interesting thing to point out. What were some of the things, I'm trying to think back to some of the points that were made specifically by Jones Giltner when she was talking about the words that were not defined specifically. The word discourage was one of those. And she said that wasn't defined. I think a lot of the legislators brought that up as well, right? That the word discourage is not defined.
Yeah.
The word unreasonable is not defined.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that brings us back to the response that was given was, well, it's not the intent of this bill. Well, I don't feel that that will be the effect, that it will be weaponized, because a big part of why there's so much pushback on the specifics of the bill is because it will infringe on free speech potentially. And it doesn't matter what the intent of the bill is, it matters what it says. And when it may be that the legislators who are currently in office, they don't want to target and they don't want to, I find that to be a little bit more, that's okay. No. I find that to be a little more little harder to believe that they don't fully understand what's going on. But even if that were the case, another generation of legislators could come in who would, or just people in general in the pro-abortion, pro-choice movement who would weaponize it. So it doesn't matter intent. It matters what the effect of the law will be.
Yes, and again, that's one of the reasons why it's so important to understand the Constitution and to understand our legal code, because there are things such as congressional record, which was also mentioned in the hearing, where you look at the debates and you look at the discussion to determine the meaning of words that are written on the page. That's one of the reasons why, for example, when we study the Constitution, we want to know the original intent of the framers that wrote the Constitution. But the important distinction is when the reason we have to understand original intent is because they put certain words in the Constitution or in those original amendments, for example, the Bill of Rights, that meant something very specific. We're 250 years this year, removed at least from the Declaration of Independence, right? So after 250 years, the definition of words change, right? So if we were to use our 21st century, 2026 definition of certain words and impose it on those same words, but that had a different definition in 1787 or those earlier years when the framers were writing and crafting the Constitution and all of our founding documents, then we would not be holding true to what those words on the paper actually meant. And so that's the point here, is that the words that the legislators are saying or the impact that the legislators are saying this bill would have, those words are not in code. They are not on this piece of legislation. And so we have to know what is actually written, and we have to hold them accountable to saying these words need to be defined, they need to be written. It would be a win, a small win a small step in the right direction, if at the very least they defined discourage or removed that word from the bill. I think that would be something that we could get behind and celebrate. Overall, I don't think that'll erase the vagueness of this bill. So it still wouldn't be ultimately what we would want. Yes. But at the very least, I think that's the most dangerous part about this bill. And so that would be something that would be we could look to see happen. Shout out to the testimonies that were given. I thought that there were a lot of brave people. There were a lot of people that stepped in and gave personal experiences, that gave just as concerned citizens. Some people were representing organizations, but hopefully that was a good example for you guys so you could see what that looks like and what that process looks like to testify.
Yeah, absolutely. And India, can you just go through what it looks like for somebody to go ahead and testify? I know you did a little earlier in the stream, but also just what a resource we are to.
Yes, I would definitely say, because there is a strategy to testifying.
Yes.
So if you ever want to testify on a bill, please reach out to Nandi Gamble, who testified today. Hopefully you heard her testimony. Reach out to her because she will coach you and she will work with you to determine that strategy. Sometimes, again, you only have 2 minutes. So sometimes if you have 5 people that are testifying, if each person hits a specific point, then you would have covered the full range of arguments that could be presented in a bill. Sometimes there's certain arguments that will make more of an impact than other arguments. Sometimes a person's personal story will make a certain impact that another story may not. So talk to her because she will coach you. She will help you to figure out, for example, thankfully, everyone was able to testify for the full 2 minutes today. But there are times when there are so many testimonies where it's required to be shrunk down to 1 minute. So she will help you to process that. She'll help you to make sure that you're cutting out unnecessary words. Because again, 2 minutes is not that long. So there might be a lot that you want to say, and it's a lot harder than it seems to get it into 2 minutes. So definitely reach out to her because she will coach you. She will help you through the process. She'll bring you into the strategy. But that being said, if that's something that the Lord places on your heart to testify, you can see how truth was advanced today. You saw how, again, the stories that were presented put an exclamation point on the points that the legislators were bringing up. A legislator can't testify to, oh, I was standing on the sidewalk and I was the one assaulted, right? But the individuals with their stories were able to bring that up. So it's definitely a powerful thing to see individuals from the community sharing their stories or sharing the points that they are concerned about,
Yeah.
definitely reach out to Nandi, and so we can make that work really well.
Yeah,
Have good
yeah.
synergy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then too, it can be a scary thing, going into the legislature. It's your house, it's for the citizens, but it can also be very intimidating. And you guys have support. You guys have people in your corner who are going to make sure that you are prepared, who are going to be there to debrief with you, to role play with you. And it's a wonderful thing for our team. We love to talk with you guys. I know Nandi loves to have the support, even to have people giving testimony from all different angles of an issue.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to all of those who are watching who have, and to those who are thinking about it, connect with us. We'd love to talk with you more
Please
about it.
do. Please do. So you saw that the bill was released from committee. So that means that the process isn't over. So the next step is for it to go to the full House floor. So now your representative definitely needs to hear from you. If you already contacted your representative through our form, thank you for doing that. Now it's time to share it with other people so we can ramp up the comments so that they can definitely hear from the community. Notice, that's the other thing I was going to bring up, and let me know if there are any questions too that we can, if any points that we want to address there. Notice there were a couple of legislators who mentioned the comments that they got from the community, from their constituents. That's huge. Also, notice that the sponsor led out with saying, this is not a free speech violation. The reason she let out with that is because of all of the comments that she mentioned seeing them on social media. Also the comments that were being sent through email. So the comments that you make shape the discussion. Even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it doesn't seem like it, it definitely shapes the conversation that happens in committee. It puts legislators on alert to say, oh, wait a minute, this is an issue, we need to address it. And so please continue to send in your comments. Again, now it's going to the full House floor. And that link, again, is on delawarefamilies.org/updates. If you scroll down, you'll see our list of active campaigns. Also, make sure you're subscribed because that will give you alerts and updates throughout each step of the process. So did we have any questions or comments? And if you have any questions now, you can drop them in the chat before we wrap up here.
Yeah.
But not sure if there was any questions that people had.
Well, there's a lot of, in looking at these comments and questions, you guys are on it. You guys understand the threat that this bill poses. So that's a wonderful thing. We're always so excited when there's some agreement there, for sure. Let's see here.
What are some examples of actions that have presented in the past to warrant this bill, and have the federal law that the federal law acted on was dismissed and failed to cover the rights of individuals in Delaware? Okay, so I think what you're asking here is what prompted this bill to be filed, right? Were there specific examples? And that was one of the questions that one of the individuals testifying asked. I believe it was Moira Sheridan who asked that question, and we didn't get a clear answer to that in committee. I don't think the Federal FACE Act was definitely passed in response to very specific actions that happened during that time. The 1990s, 1994 was when it was passed. But there's been no specific examples brought up to justify the passage or the introduction of this bill in Delaware, other than what the sponsor said about federal executive order. But again, that executive order was in response to the FACE Act being weaponized, not in response to the FACE Act being used legitimately. So bottom line is there really is no legitimate, at least none has been presented, no legitimate reason for this bill to be presented now. It's more of just a reaction, I think, to, again, another way of trying to silence pro-life opposition and advance access to abortion. But another great question. Okay. I think that was all of the questions, but again, thank you all for your comments. Thank you for your engagement. It's definitely a lot more fun to watch these together than just kind of by ourselves in our room, yelling at our screen.
Yes.
By ourselves. But again, shout out to all the legislators. Thank your legislators when you do talk to them for their service, regardless of whether you agree with them or don't agree with them. They are, a lot of them, if you ask them and talk to them, you'll find out that they are there because they are intentionally wanting to serve their community. And they're doing what they believe is the right thing. And a lot of the source of disagreement in issues like this one, which has a very fundamental worldview flaw, is just that it's a worldview clash. So in your conversations with your legislators, you also do have an opportunity to help to educate them about the worldview clash. Ask them questions. Ask them, why do you think this is true?
Yeah.
Why do you support human rights? Why do you really support human rights? Help them to dig down and really think through. And also remember, be respectful. Again, they are your legislators. They are there representing us. We hear in scripture, fear God, honor the king, right? So there's honor due those who are in authority over us.
Yes.
So whenever you're communicating with them, whether sending messages or talking to them in person, always do it with respect. Pray for your elected officials. That's something else the Bible tells us to do.
Yeah.
They have a lot of pressure, a lot on their shoulders, a lot to process. Imagine, all these comments that we're sending them, they're getting that probably for most of the bills that they're hearing. And that's a lot to decipher, a lot of pressure, and a lot to process. So pray for your legislators.
Yes.
And then continue to stay involved in the process because, again, your voice does matter. It's important to understand the worldview clash so that you can speak to it accurately and precisely so that your conversations will actually impact the conversation. Notice which legislators that you're listening to today actually had genuine questions. Even if, again, you didn't disagree with their final decision, maybe you don't agree with their worldview, but notice the ones that were actually willing to have the conversation and actually willing to ask the questions.
Yeah.
That is huge. That means it's an open door for conversation for you. So there's a lot that we can do to impact the policy realm and these individuals that are making decisions that will impact us.
Yeah. And one of the things that we talk about as a team is interact with people in such a way where after you're done talking about the issue, you can go and you can share the gospel with them right after.
Right.
So you never want to damage your witness. You can stand with resolve and for truth, but in a way that is gracious and loving. And it doesn't mean that you're weak in any way. It means that we have a greater purpose in all of this.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate you all joining us. If you feel like watching another hearing, there is another one coming up at 1:30. This particular hearing will be for the bill that would protect women's sports in Delaware. So if you want to stick around, you can join us later on at 1:30 for the women's sports hearing. But I hope that you continue to get involved. Again, subscribe at delawarefamilies.org/updates in order to stay connected with us. And we hope to see you again at some future hearing, if not this afternoon, then at some point. Stay connected and continue to pray as we go through the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you guys have any questions for us, you can email us at info@delawarefamilies.org. So Delaware is fully spelled out, delawarefamilies.org.
Yeah. Thank you guys. We'll see you soon.